Buenas tardes a todos y bienvenidos. Vamos a esperar 2 minutos más. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We're going to wait 2 more minutes. Buenas tardes a todos. Vamos a esperar 1 minuto más. Good evening, everyone. We're going to wait 1 more minute. Buenas tardes a todos y bienvenidos a esta charla de académicos, asistencia y cultura comunitaria Montessori. Esta charla será bilingüe, la presentación está bilingüe y será compartida mañana con la grabación vía Parents Forum. Welcome everyone to the academics attendance at Montessori Community Charla. The Charla will be bilingual, the presentation is also bilingual, and we will share the presentation and the recording tomorrow via Parents Forum. Para poder acceder a los servicios de traducción, ustedes pueden dar clic donde dice More, pueden escoger el globito que dice interpretación y pueden escoger su lenguaje de preferencia. To access the translation services, you can click the More interpretation globe and you can choose the language. Gracias. Slide, please. Y para nosotros es una alegría dar excelencia académica. Quiero contarles que LAM tiene un plan estratégico que fue aprobado desde el 2023 y tiene 3 pilares maravillosos que son reconstruir comunidad, diversidad, equidad e inclusión, y este que es excelencia académica. ¿Y cuál es la misión de LAM? Somos una comunidad Montessori bilingüe arraigada en la cultura latinoamericana, en la cual todos los estudiantes pueden prosperar. Siguiente. Y quiero presentarles a ustedes nuestro acrónimo de LAM, paz. ¿Qué significa paz? Palabras positivas, acciones de respeto, zona de aprendizaje. Siguiente. And let's talk about our agenda tonight. We're going to present ourselves. We're going to show a 4-minute video to talk about Dr. Maria Montessori. We're going to do an activity. We're going to talk about our language allocation plan, our scope and sequence. We're going to talk about primary, lower elementary, upper elementary. We're going to talk about attendance, student support, enhanced detections, and we're going to end this presentation talking about grace and courtesy. Siguiente, Cris. La universalidad del método Montessori, un legado. The universality of the Montessori method, a legacy. Before we do this, I want us to have the opportunity to introduce ourselves. So if you can say in the chat your name and your community name will be amazing. Vamos a hacer una actividad donde todos se pueden presentar en el chat. So we're going to give 2 minutes. Vamos a dar 2 minutos para que ustedes se puedan presentar. You can use the chat. Pueden utilizar el chat para presentarse y presentar el nombre de su comunidad. Mr. Chris, creo que no está funcionando. Oh, ok. Acotic y Mataponi, bienvenidos. Hola, Sara. ¿Quién más? Who else? I think Miss Ernestine is representing Patapsco. Who else? ¿Quién más? Oh, ok. So we were fixing something in the chat. Estábamos arreglando algo en el chat. Ahora sí pueden presentarse en Orcas y Aztecas. Agua, bienvenidos, Agua. Orcas, bienvenidos, Orcas. Alpaca, tierra y agua, bienvenidos. Welcome. Taínos, bienvenidos. Aire, bienvenidos. Aire. Gracias por estar aquí. Alpaca, bienvenidos. Welcome. Okay, now we are going to begin. You can feel free to keep like putting the names of the communities in the chat. Feel free to keep dropping the names. But for now, I want to do an activity that I loved. The first thing that I want you to do is to close your eyes. And please think about your school when you were little. Some of you will remember, maybe you won't remember anything. Others will have good memories, others not really good memories. But I invite you to remember your classroom. I suppose it will be a traditional school, full of desks and chairs, where you had the teacher in front of you teaching. And they were telling you what to do, and you had to be sitting at the same desk the whole day. But maybe
Hi,
you were-
Natasha.
Hi.
Hi. I thought I'd ask if you think I should come home or keep working at work. I want to.
Oops. Sorry. But maybe you were lucky enough to go to a Montessori school. I want you to open your eyes. And I want to share that I have a lot of memories from my school, and I went to a traditional school. My kindergarten teacher created a huge impact on my life. She was the one who taught me how to read, and thanks to her inspiration, I ended up being a teacher and choosing this amazing career for the rest of my life. I also had a math teacher who helped me to hate math until I was an adult, but after my Montessori training, I learned to love Montessori and math. Now that we remember that school, I want to invite you to close your eyes again and imagine a different school, another type of school, where the desk is not in front of the teacher, in which everything is tailored to the size of the children, an extension of the house, like a second home, a pleasant place where you will feel happy to learn because you want to learn, not because you have to learn. A place where you will feel love from adults, a place full of beautiful materials that are the key to the world, an environment that will teach you love for nature, yourself, and others. A place where you will feel in peace, in harmony, a place to create a better, respectful, and tolerant society, a place like this. Chris, can you go to the next slide, please? And before we talk about this beautiful Montessori environment, I want to present myself. My name is Alexandra Torres, and I'm LAM's principal. And I'm really happy to present my team, Mr. Chris, who is our IT director, and he's behind the scenes, always helping us. Ms. Luz Maria Ramos, our primary coordinator coach. Mr. Joel Stenberg, our lower elementary coordinator coach. Adelaida Principe, our upper elementary coordinator coach. Ms. Alicia Schuler, our student support director. Ms. Claudia Silva, our director of family engagement. And also Ms. Jessica Panfil, our executive director. And if you will see this beautiful Montessori environment that we have in lab. There's a lot of light, a lot of wood materials, plants, and beautiful materials to work with. Next slide, please. Gracias. Now we are going to see who is the scientific behind the genes. You can click the video.
Help me to do it myself. That is really the essence of Montessori education. I'm Carolina Montessori, one of Maria Montessori's great-granddaughters. She was born in 1870 in Chiaravalle, Italy. She was the only child of Alessandro Montessori and Renilde Stoppani. Her mother was an elementary school teacher, but of course stopped working when she married and probably wanted her daughter to do all the things that she had not been able to do. And he said, you can't study medicine, women don't do that. And she said, well, I know that I shall be a doctor. She was the first woman to finish her studies at the University of Rome, medical studies. She pleaded for equal pay for women, which was very extraordinary in those days. She was very eloquent and that she could speak very She was particularly interested in the psychiatric department. She found that there were children, they were there locked up in a big ward. The nurse said, "Oh God, they eat the crumbs from the floor, they have no manners." And Maria Montessori said, "No, they have nothing to do. They need sensory stimulation." These children performed sometimes better than the children who had regular, traditional education. I think she thought that she was onto something great. It was so exceptional what these children could do. These children were capable of great discipline, order, care for one another, care for themselves, and also were very eager to learn. So she really saw a new kind of child. The Montessori approach is based on providing a prepared environment for children, so made to measure, where they can learn by themselves with very little guidance from the teachers. She saw how children suffered in the traditional kind of schools. At that time, children were seen as small adults, so they had to behave as adults, and of course they weren't. The whole idea of social justice and human rights, it's ingrained in her method. It's respect for each other, respect for nature, respect for the universe, for our world. It's all in there. She received many honors and awards, but of course the most honorable thing is that she was nominated 3 times for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Gracias, Mr. Chris. Y gracias a esta maravillosa mujer, María Montessori, nosotros tenemos el día de hoy este método que es maravilloso y que en LAM somos muy afortunados de tenerlo. Tenemos un método Montessori bilingüe y público. Y este siguiente parte de la presentación también tiene un video que vamos a compartir con todos ustedes. El video dura 15 minutos, por eso no lo vamos a presentar en este momento, pero siéntanse libres de verlo porque es un video creado por Montessori Public. Lo crearon hablando de cómo funciona el método Montessori en las escuelas públicas de los Estados Unidos. Siguiente. To go beyond Montessori is to rediscover Montessori. Montessori is waiting for us in the future. And now, before we go to the level presentations, I want to share a little bit more about the language allocation plan. During the 23-24, we work in partnership with the Canizales group. They work really close with the academic team to make sure that LAM has a dual language program really clear. And what's a language allocation plan? A language allocation plan is what determines how much and when each language will be used as the primary medium of instruction. It works to identify the percentages of instruction in each language based on the site's daily schedule for each grade level across the span of the day or the week. As you may know, we have 3 levels: primary, lower elementary, and upper elementary. and we manage the bilingual model in different ways. So that's why LAM needed a language allocation plan to make that clear. I'm also happy to share that after this presentation, we are going to make the language allocation plan public for everyone to see it in our website. Next slide, please. Ahora hablemos un poquito del alcance y secuencia. El alcance y secuencia es un resumen de todo el contenido y de las habilidades que se enseñan en el currículo de un programa, no solamente Montessori, pero lo utilizan en otras escuelas. Este alcance y secuencia nos permite ver, junto con el orden en el que se enseñan las materias de los estudiantes. ¿A qué se refiere el alcance? A las áreas de desarrollo que se abordarán en el currículo, mientras que la secuencia es el orden en el que se enseñarán esas habilidades. Y quiero dar las gracias porque esto también fue un trabajo del 2023-2024 de los coordinadores, entrenadores, tratando de poner un alcance y secuencia para LAM. LAM no tenía un alcance y secuencia público y estoy muy feliz de decir que este año vamos a tener un alcance y secuencia que también va a ser público entre nuestra página web para que ustedes puedan ver cómo LAM maneja el alcance y secuencia de los 3 niveles, casa de niños, taller 1 y taller 2. Siguiente. Y ahora para mí es un placer presentarles a Miss Luzma. Miss Luzma es la coordinadora, entrenadora de Casa de Niños. Miss Luzma is our primary coordinator coach, and she's going to talk about primary. Miss Luzma.
Hi. Hola. Bien, buenas tardes. Quiero presentarles la parte del horario de Casa de Niños, lo que hacemos en el día a día. Aquí pueden ver ustedes dos horarios. Uno es el que está muy específico desde la hora que entran los niños, desde las 8:20 a 8:30. Y en la otra imagen es un poquito reflejado con imágenes lo que ustedes pueden estar viendo. Entonces, por ejemplo, los niños ingresan, los recibimos a las 8:20 de la mañana a 8:30 de la mañana. Y entonces en ese lapso de tiempo son guiados a sus ambientes, los niños de forma independiente cambian sus zapatos, cuelgan su chaqueta, ponen la lonchera y la botella de agua en el espacio correspondiente a su clase. Esos minutos es esa transición para ingresar. Una vez estando en la clase de 8:30 a 8:45, se hace un círculo grupal donde los niños cantan canciones, se hace el calendario, se saludan y si hay alguna noticia que dar importante, también es el espacio para conversar con ellos. Posterior a esto, tenemos nuestro tiempo de trabajo, que es de 8:45 a 10:45, también donde están las clases cocurriculares como música, arte, educación física, y es la mañana de trabajo de español. Aquí todos los niños están trabajando inmersos en el material Montessori con las guías de español y de inglés. Y hay una tercera persona que es nuestra guía asistente ahí. Después, a las 10:45 a 10:55 es esa pequeña transición hacia el parque. Sus hijos visitan los parques de diferentes, son 4 parques, 5, donde ellos van y están con algunas otras clases. Después de esto sigue el de 10:55 a 11:40, que es el parque, donde los niños juegan e interactúan con otros niños de otras clases. De 11:40 a 11:55 es la transición hacia las clases para comer su almuerzo. Llegan los niños, cambian zapatos, preparan su mesa para comer, lavan sus manos y disfrutan de la siguiente parte, que es el refrigerio compartido. Claro, que envían de casa y el que trae la escuela para los niños que piden lunch. Después de 12:45 a 1 hay una pequeña transición donde también los niños que van a dormir pre-K 3 se preparan para ir al baño y hacen esa transición para ir al nap con con las asistentes. Después de 12:45, perdón, de 12:45 a 1 En ese lapso también hay una lectura de libro en español por las maestras. Y ya por la tarde, de 1 a 2:50 de la tarde, es el trabajo para los pre-K4 y para los kindergarten en español pre-K4 y kindergarten en inglés, mientras que los niños pequeños de pre-K3 toman su siesta. Una vez terminando este ciclo de trabajo de la tarde, pues hacemos un pequeño cierre, una transición para despedirnos e ir a casa. De 3 a 3:15 es cuando ustedes vienen a recoger a esos pequeñitos. Continuamos. A ver. Y dentro de casa de niños hay algunas áreas que trabajan académicas. Por ejemplo, tenemos matemáticas, lenguaje, ciencias, geografía y también dentro de Montessori tenemos áreas muy importantes para el desarrollo de la motricidad, el área sensorial y el área de vida práctica. Indiscutiblemente tenemos el área de arte también. Hay algunos otros rincones por ahí dentro del ambiente Montessori, como es una mesa de la paz, una mesa de calma, un rincón de lectura, una mesa de observación para los niños. Ustedes pudieron verlos el día que vinieron al Open House. Entonces, cada una de esas áreas que hay en casa de niños es nuestro currículum que trabajamos en esos 3 años en que sus hijos están en la clase. Dentro de cada imagen, cuando sea compartida para ustedes la presentación, hay un video ahí. Y las maestras están presentando materiales para que ustedes tengan una idea también de cuáles son algunas presentaciones de las que sus hijos van a poder tener con las maestras. Y eso es lo que Miss les platicaba al inicio, el plan de alocación del lenguaje. Entonces aquí ustedes pueden ver en casa de niños cuál es nuestro lenguaje que usamos para pre-K3, pre-K4, kindergarten y cómo está dividido. Durante las mañanas, que era lo que les comentaba nuestra mañana de trabajo, tenemos español para pre-K3, pre-K4 y kindergarten. Todo nuestro ciclo de trabajo es en español para los niños. Lo hace la guía de español y lo hace la guía de inglés. Incluso para pre-K4, en la tarde continúan con el ciclo de trabajo en español. Y esta parte que está en azul es la parte en que kindergarten recibe sus lecciones o la instrucción en inglés y lo hace la maestra de inglés en la tarde. En nuestras clases de especiales también usamos el español con nuestra maestra de PI, nuestra maestra de arte y nuestro profesor de música. Los niños reciben toda esta parte de instrucción en español, lo que ustedes ven en color rojo. Gracias.
Gracias, Mimi.
De nada.
And now I'm going to present Mr. Joel Steinberg.
Hello. Hi. My name is Joel. I'm the lower elementary coach and coordinator, and this is kind of just a little bit of a view of the schedule in the lower elementary classroom. It's actually 4 different schedules. They look very similar, but they're all different. In 4 of our communities, the school year started in Spanish, and in the other 4 communities, the school year started in English. This year, one of the things that we did that's a little different is we're following an ABA schedule, which is typical and best practices for dual language schools. And what that basically means is that the school day, the language switches each day. So if you're in English on Monday, on Tuesday you'll be in Spanish. Then Wednesday you'll be in English, Thursday in Spanish, Friday in English, and then Monday in Spanish, and back and forth. And basically that takes into consideration holidays. Whatever day you were in the day, whatever language you were in the day before, the next day of school you'll be in the other language, and it just switches back and forth throughout the whole school year. Last year we had a Q1 and Q3 schedule and a Q2 and Q4 schedule. So that's different this year for the lower elementary classrooms. in the morning work cycle after arrival, there is a long block of a work cycle where the students, it's supposed to be an uninterrupted block of time where the students work on on all their different types of work across the curriculum. Some classes have recess, some classes have lunch first. It just depends on which class you're in. And then if you look closely at the schedules, you can see how they vary. But some all specials are in the afternoon. Sometimes specials are right after recess, or they might be right before dismissal, depending on which class you're in. In the afternoon, there's also a afternoon work block, which is where we really try to focus on interventions with amongst the different classrooms. So that's where the the student support team has really focused their work, and where teachers focus on data and trying to provide a little extra support for students who might need some extra support. To go back to specials. In lower elementary, there are 5 different specials. There's music, PE, SEL, art, and library. Next slide, please. And this is just kind of a little view of the different areas that we have in lower elementary. There is language and there is mathematics, and a portion of language is taught in English, and a portion of language is taught in Spanish. A portion of mathematics is taught in English, and a portion of math is taught in Spanish. We also have culture and science, and likewise, within each of those areas, a portion is taught in English and a portion is taught in Spanish. And that has to do with our language allocation plan that Alexander was talking about earlier. As part of the cultural curriculum, one of the things that's new in the lower elementary curriculum are the 5 great stories, which you may or may not have heard about, which are a really core part of the lower elementary curriculum, part of the cosmic curriculum. And those stories create the backdrop for all future learning throughout the entire school year. It's the story of the coming of the universe, the story of the coming of life, the story of the coming of humans, the story of writing, and the story of numbers. We can go to the next slide. And so this is kind of a little bit of a snapshot of the language allocation plan for lower elementary. It shows it shows a little bit more detail of what is taught in Spanish and what is taught in English. And Spanish language is a little small for me to see. Let's see if I can make this a little bigger on my screen. There's reading, writing, and spelling and grammar taught in Spanish. And there's also reading, writing, and spelling, word study, and sentence analysis taught in English. And portions of grammar are also taught in English as well, things that don't translate back and forth between the 2 languages. In mathematics, geometry, measurement, data, and fractions are taught in Spanish. And in English, place value, operations, algebra, math, facts, and money are taught in English. And science, ecology and biomes and earth science are taught in Spanish. And in English, astronomy, physics, chemistry, and biology are taught in English. And culture, the cultural curriculum is by and large taught in English as well. And then you can see and for the specials, our PE, music, and library are taught in Spanish, and art and SEL are taught in English. Next slide, please. And this is probably impossible to get much out of because the writing is really small, but this is kind of a snapshot of the lower elementary scope and sequence, as well as the 4 slides on the top, or the 4 pictures on the top show a little bit of a view of the scope and sequence, and the 2 slides or pictures on the bottom show a view of the pacing guides, which helped teachers plan and as they're trying to make sure that the students have access to the entire curriculum. So this is what Ms. Alexander was talking about, which is what we were working on to create for LAM, and which will be shared out with you soon. So thank you.
Gracias, Roberto. And it's a pleasure to leave you with Miss Adelaida Principe, our upper elementary coordinator coach, and she's going to present upper elementary. Miss Adelaida.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Adelaida, the upper elementary coordinator and coach. In this slide, we can see the schedule for one of the upper elementary classrooms. We have 4 currently. And the schedule pretty much looks the same for every classroom. The only thing that's going to be different are going to be the order of the specials when they are offered. We receive students early by 8:15. All students should be in the classrooms, and our work cycle starts and it goes all the way up to 11:40, at which we transition into our lunch. By lunchtime, then we have until 12:15, in which they go to their specials. We have the same specials for both lower and upper elementary. After the specials, they go to their transition and going into their recess, which they use. They have 2 classrooms that share recess together. One of them use the elementary playground, while the other 2 classes uses the soccer field and the basketball court. These spaces are also shared with Miss Paola when she's doing her classes. But when she's inside the multi-purpose room, then we share all of that space. After recess, they head back to the classrooms by 1:55, and our afternoon work cycle goes from 2 o'clock until 3 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, every classroom does their responsibilities. Each of the students have roles that they have to fulfill for helping out in maintaining the classroom environment. They have to bring their lunch bags down to the kitchen. They have to water the plants and all sorts of different activities that they do, which are distributed among the students to be able to maintain the classroom. And after doing their responsibilities, then we transition up for the dismissal process. Next slide, please. These are some examples of the materials that students will be using throughout the year. For our cultural studies, where, like Joel mentioned, we're going to be studying all the 5th grade lessons. We're also going to be focusing on physics and chemistry a little bit more in upper elementary. So they will be doing studies for all of the elements on the periodic table. They will be doing also all of the atoms. That we have an atom board that they also get to use. They also have all of the earth sciences that are given in Spanish, and all of the political geography that is being given in English. In math, we get to be able to do some advanced math as well. All students will be able to go through all 4 operations, be able to go through fractions and decimal fractions. And some lucky students will be able to do a little bit more advanced work with squaring and cubing, which we have a picture here. And the other picture that we have here for math is alternate bases that they can also get to study. In geometry, they're going to be studying measurement. They're going to be doing area, volume. And in language, obviously, we're going to be studying both languages. Here is an example of sentence analysis, the advanced study of a sentence analysis, which goes a little bit more in depth beyond the subject and predicate as well. For the language allocation plan, we have a little bit different from lower elementary. We still are going to follow that whatever language we were one week, we're going to switch it up on the next week. So we go a full week on the same language, and then the following week we go into English language. When there is a break For example, for Thanksgiving break and winter break, whatever language we left off before the break, then we're going to start off after the break on the opposite language. So for upper elementary Spanish, we do language, all of the different areas of language, reading, writing, word study, and grammar. We do all of the geometry, both with two-dimensional figures, three-dimensional figures, and everything involved with measurement and data. So perimeter, area, and then all of the different graphs and how to interpret graph information as well. For science and geography, we do science and earth sciences in Spanish, while in English, we are going to be doing history and political geography. In English, we're also going to be doing all of the 4 different areas for language. And in math, we're going to be doing all operations, including fractions and decimal fractions. All of our specials are going to follow same as in lower elementary, where we have some specials in Spanish and some specials in English as well. Next slide. This is our scope and sequence. Right now we have all of the order of the different topics that we're going to be covering by the different academic areas that we're offering. And it also shows what is the order that we do them. We also have a pacing guide that will tell teachers the different dates by which we should be covering all of the different topics that we'll be covering as well.
Gracias, Miss Adelaida. And I think this is an open invitation for everyone. Just to remember, next week, we are going to have our back to school night. Tuesday, September 17, it's our primary back to school night. And Wednesday, September 18, it's our lower and upper elementary back to school night. So we can wait to see you to have like more information from the teachers. You can ask questions there. We will be around to answer your questions too. Now, for me, it's a pleasure to say that, of course, academics are important, but of course, the attendance, it's really important on the academic part. So I'm happy to present Miss Claudia Silva, our Director of Family Engagement, for the attendance part. Miss Claudia.
Buenas tardes a todos. Yo voy a hacer mi presentación en español y les voy a hablar sobre asistencia, attendance. Como ustedes se han podido dar cuenta, hay algunos cambios que hemos hecho a nuestras políticas de asistencia. Por favor, revisen nuestro manual de familias, no solo para asistencia, attendance, sino para la mayoría de temas que ustedes estén interesados en saber cómo la escuela aborda diferentes situaciones. Toda nuestra política de asistencia está en nuestro manual para las familias. Por favor, tengan en cuenta que todos los esfuerzos que hacemos para llevar la asistencia día a día en nuestra escuela es para apoyar a nuestras familias, para eliminar cualquier barrera que exista, para tener una buena asistencia escolar, porque se ha probado con muchas investigaciones que uno de los factores más importantes para determinar el éxito escolar es la participación de los padres en la educación de los niños y la asistencia a la escuela. La otra gran razón es seguridad. Estoy segura que todos ustedes cuentan con que nosotros sabemos a dónde están sus hijos todo el tiempo que ustedes confían sus hijos a nosotros. Uno de los mensajes más importantes, si es que se acuerdan de algo de esta intervención que estoy teniendo, es que ustedes pueden revisar los récords de asistencia de sus hijos diariamente. Si ustedes tienen su cuenta de PowerSchool, todos ustedes la deben de tener porque es por ahí que han inscrito a sus hijos. Ustedes pueden acceder a los récords de asistencia diarios sobre sus hijos. Uno de los cambios que hemos hecho es que ustedes pueden ver que van a recibir comunicaciones diariamente si su hijo no está en la escuela, como una forma de llevar el récord. Las tardanzas, por favor recuerden que todos los niños que llegan a la escuela fuera del horario escolar determinado tienen que pasar por la oficina principal, el front desk, y un adulto tiene que firmar por ellos. Aunque los chicos grandes de cuarto y quinto grado tengan un waiver que les da permiso de salir sin acompañamiento adulto, esto no quiere decir que pueden ingresar a la escuela sin un adulto. Todos los niños que llegan tarde tienen que ir acompañados por un adulto. Eso significa que usted tiene que parquear, bajarse y firmar. En ese momento se le va a entregar un pase. El objetivo del pase nuevamente es asegurar que todos sabemos dónde están sus nenes. Si usted no firma el libro de tardanzas, nosotros no sabemos si el niño llegó o no, y entonces se le va a tomar como ausente. Cada vez que nosotros tenemos un emergency drill, un ejemplo de emergencia, lo primero que la registrar hace es agarrar su libro de tardanzas, es agarrar su libro de registros, porque así nos aseguramos que en cualquier emergencia, todos y cada uno de nuestros estudiantes sabemos dónde están. En el manual para familias, ustedes van a encontrar qué es lo que se considera una ausencia que se puede excusar con excusa y las que no. Por favor, si tienen alguna pregunta, siéntanse libres de contactarme y podemos hablar sobre asistencia. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Miss Claudia. And I'm really happy to introduce you to our amazing student support director, Miss Alicia Schuler. She's gonna give you an overview of student support. Miss Alicia.
Hi, everyone. So as Alex said, I'm the Director of Student Support. Student support refers to our special education team, Section 504, so students that receive accommodations in the classrooms, referral and intervention, social emotional, and support for our English language learners. So I am still somewhat new to LAM. This is my second year here, but my 16th year in special education in DC. And so in still being new to the Montessori setting, I'm really excited to talk to you about all of the incredible ways that Montessori aligns to what we refer to in special ed as universal design for learning. So what that means is when we create learning environments that support the needs of all children, then we remove the need for individualized interventions. And so I believe that Maria Montessori, all those years ago, really had this concept in mind when she created this philosophy. So Chris, if you could move to the next slide. So what I mean by this is when we think about a traditional classroom, we're focused heavily on the relationship between the teacher and the class. So that instruction is primarily occurring from the teacher leading in a group setting from the front of the room. And what we know for many of our neurodiverse learners is that learning in a group environment, which may be loud, overstimulating, and requires a lot of auditory attention, that this isn't always the best style of learning for them. So Chris, if you move to the next slide, when we think about the elements of Montessori instruction, instead of thinking of those two elements, the teacher and the class, we think about this as a triangle. So first, Chris, if you could click, we think about the child. So in Montessori, we think about this as the child has an inherent desire for learning, and it is through that teacher and the environment that we kind of tap into that desire. Chris, you can click the next button. So we next think about the prepared adults. In Montessori, you're going to hear your children refer to their teachers as their guides. And again, that is that idea that they are guiding them towards that self-discovery. We also talk about our teachers as observers, really getting to know kids and their learning styles individually. And if you click to the next spot, we see environment. Unlike in traditional education, the Montessori environment plays a really pivotal piece in the learning. And so we're going to talk in a second about what we mean by prepared environment. You can go ahead and move to the next slide for me. And Chris, you can flip through this one. We have each slide because there's a lot of content in both languages so that when we share it out, everyone's able to access it in what's best for them. So you've probably observed that the classrooms look a little bit different than you might be used to in other schools. So our classrooms are designed to be open, organized, meaning that everything has its place. Materials in the environment are real, meaning that they are created and specifically designed to be appropriate for children. And each material in the environment has a specific reason for being there. You can move to the next slide. When we think about how our guides engage with our students, they're really using that observation to determine the interests of that child, their developmental level, and their readiness for academic concepts. So specifically when we're thinking about children who receive special education or accommodations, this is incredibly important that we are not just giving each child the same lesson as we would in a traditional setting, but kids' content is really tailored towards their interests and their ability to access that content. So moving to the next slide, you're going to hear lessons referred to as presentations, and our students are invited to participate in those presentations. And what that means is that students have the opportunity to opt in or opt out of learning at any given time. Of course, that doesn't mean that we don't expose children to concepts. When a child decides that they don't want to participate in a lesson, it leaves our teachers and our support staff to do some troubleshooting around how can we prepare the child for this lesson? What is it about that presentation that might feel uninteresting or intimidating? And how do we kind of tap into that desire for learning?
Miss Alicia, are you there?
I think maybe she dropped out. I
Oh,
can read the slide until she comes back.
thank
So
you.
the prepared adult lessons are referred to as presentations, as she was mentioning. We can go to the next slide, I think. Yes, prepared environment. So in the prepared environment, independent practice is referred to as work. The child experiments for himself and makes his own discoveries. During a work cycle, a child may select any work that a guide has presented to them. Students may repeat a work as many times as they would like, working towards mastery always. Teachers encourage students to complete a variety of works each day. Typically, a student will complete 3 to 4 works in a work cycle, but really the focus is on the quality of work and not how many works are done, but how much learning is happening. And while one guide is leading lessons for this, the second guide is supporting students who are working.
Thank you, Mr. John. I think Miss
she's
Alicia is back. Gracias, Mr. John.
Thank you so much, Joel, for jumping in. Chris, you can jump to the next slide. Wonderful. Okay, so we talked a lot about kind of what Montessori looks like in the classroom. And as powerful as those teacher observations are, we also know that we want to gather as much information about a child's learning so we can efficiently support them. And so in addition to the observations from our teachers, we also look at these 4 data points. So for all of our new students, We administer the PLS-5, which is the preschool language scale. Language is typically the first indication for a child they may need extra support in an academic setting. So if your child is new to LAM, we will be completing this over the next couple of weeks and following up with you about their progress. For starting in kindergarten through third grade, our students participate in the DIBELS and Lectura assessment. So these are benchmarking assessments that are done 3 times a year to help us track students' progress through the foundational reading skills in English and Spanish. And then we also use the NWA, which is a nationally administered benchmarking assessment that looks at English, Spanish, and math skills. And so again, your child will be administered this 3 times a year, and we will follow up with you to share their results, and particularly if there is any indication that they need a little bit of extra support from the student support team.
Gracias, Miss Alicia. Okay, and to close this presentation, we are going to talk about grace and courtesy. Grace and courtesy is something that we use in Montessori. We use it with the students, really close with the PATS acronym. And it is really important for us as guides and as adults to model this grace and courtesy. So we have a definition of the grace and courtesy lessons. And what is this? These lessons help children and adults to learn to successfully navigate the social environment of their classroom and beyond. Grace and courtesy skills provide a roadmap to developing respectful relationships and achieving belonging and significance within the environment. One of the wonderful components of the Montessori pedagogy is the idea that social skills can and should be taught proactively at all levels to promote an environment of mutual respect and dignity. So that's why we try to create this grace and courtesy also for adults. When we ask our little ones to say buenos dias, good morning, to say thank you, gracias, those are the same things that we model in the school as adults too. So the next 2 slides are kind of like presentations that we use inside the classroom, but we also use as adults inside our LAM community. So I'm not going to go through all of them. It's 6:59, but this presentation will be shared with all of you. So take the time to check this grace and courtesy part. It's something that you will see around. But try to practice also at home with the students. And the last slide has important, there's a quote. I'm gonna say this one in Spanish. La gracia social, la disciplina interior y la alegría son derechos del ser humano al que se ha permitido desarrollar cualidades humanas esenciales. María Montessori. And our next slides are important contacts. I want you to feel free to reach out if you have any questions. So just remember that the first person that you need to contact if you have any questions, any concerns are the teachers. But if no, our coach coordinator levels are really always available for you. Miss Alicia, our Director of Student Support, can also help. Miss Claudia Silva. And of course, Alex Torres here. It's always available to help you to navigate this year. We hope you have an amazing 24-25 year, and we're really happy to have you here in LAM. Bienvenidos a todos. Thank you.